Hello everybody, I'm back with what I believe is going to be part 5 of the estate sale series that I've been working on. And the reason why I'm back is because I ended up going back for a second trip. After I left there, I did a little bit of research on the grinder that I had seen there. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I would like to have that grinder. Even though I don't need another grinder, it would be an upgrade from any of the grinders I currently own. So I thought about it. I thought, well, I really didn't want to spend the money, but it occurred to me to reach out to the gentleman and ask him whether or not he was looking for anything. I had noticed that he was using a little Harbor Freight 1-inch belt sander, and it had burned out, and they had tried getting it going again, and I said to him, I said, geez, I've got some extra things around here, and I had this little Delta 1-inch belt sander, and I had this large Craftsman sander, which by now you guys have probably seen the video series where I actually worked on fixing up that sander, only to discover that I had a problem, missing a part, wasn't going to get that together in time, wanted to get back out there. So what we ended up doing is we cut a deal for my Campbell Hausfeld air compressor, one of my extra air compressors I had, and so I ended up straight up trading him the compressor and the little Delta sander for the grinder. Now the Delta sander, I remember I bought that. That was a Craigslist buy, and I think I paid 40 bucks for that. Although it probably right now, used market on those is around 60 or 70 bucks in this area. So I was into it for 40, and if I wanted to sell it, I could probably easily get 50 or 60 for it. The compressor, that's kind of a tough one there. It was actually max PSI on that compressor was 135 PSI. I think it had a 20-gallon tank. It was heavy. It was a cast iron one. It was made in the USA. I remember buying that at Lowe's on sale, but I don't remember exactly what I paid. Oddly enough, when I looked online, it turns out that that compressor sells for like around $400. I'm almost positive I didn't spend that much when I bought it at Lowe's. I probably got it on sale. But it was no slouch. It was a decent compressor. It wasn't like commercial quality or anything, but I mean, compared to, like, it was better than, say, like the current Harbor Freight model or something like that. So I figured that if I wanted to sell that compressor, I would probably look to get around 100, 125 for it. So, think of it however you want to think of it as far as what I paid, or what I gave in exchange for what I got. So let me show you what I got, and that'll make it a little easier. Alright guys, so there it is. I got myself a Hammond grinder. So this is I believe this is what's called a tool grinder. Now this one is a Hammond. You can clearly see it's marked Hammond 6, and then big giant letters that says serial, and then I guess stamped on that placard below it would have been the serial number, but I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to get that off of there. But this grinder is a bit of a mystery. I searched high and low. Now Hammond tool grinders are not a mystery at all. You can find several videos on YouTube of guys with Hammond grinders. You could find several videos or photographs of Hammond tool grinders, but they're all a little bit different than this one. In particular, I think the number 4 apparently was a really popular model, and that had some interesting features. It had a knob on the side that you would turn that would precisely move the table in and out towards the grinder, towards the grinding wheel. This doesn't have that. This is a different kind of setup here. And not only that, but the other thing that initially scared me off about this thing was that it's been kind of it's been modified in some way, and I'm not clear exactly whether that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing. So for starters, you can take a look here on, you can see on the right hand side, you can see the table. So this table right here is actually mounted on a post that sticks out on the bottom here. And that post actually runs through the whole base of the grinder and comes out on this side also. So this table right here is for you to attack the wheel on the side face of the wheel. And the wheel that's in here right now appears to be a diamond wheel. Alright, so that would indicate that this would be for carbide, at least to me. So when I first saw this grinder, I thought, well, that kind of funky looking thing. I said, somebody painted it this god awful green. Well, come to find out now, green was the color of these Hammond grinders, pretty much from the factory. So this is probably the original factory paint, or what's left of it on there, believe it or not. It was on a tall angle iron stand that was quite rusty and gnarly looking. So I actually, but it was a good solid stand. So I took that stand, and it's actually outside. I didn't bother bringing it down here in the shop because I plan on just hitting that, cleaning that up real quick and giving that a quick prime and paint before I even bother bringing it down here, because it's just going to bother me the way it looks, and that's going to be something quick. I can just zip that off, zip that crap off of there and paint it. And actually, it might end up being the perfect size stand for my arbor press, so I might not even use it for this grinder. I might end up repurposing it for my arbor press. I haven't decided yet, but I wanted to get the grinder in out of the weather, so that's why this came down here right away. So we get this table over here. Well, for those of you who've been following along with this series, you may recall that I mentioned that in a metal file cabinet in the bottom drawer, where I found that Hertlein or Hertline end mill sharpener, I also found that cheesy table I got for $5, like an adjustable table off of some other kind of grinder for $5. But in that drawer, I found this big cast iron table, and at first I didn't know what it was. And then I happened to look and realized, lo and behold, it's the other cast iron table that goes on this side. So it mounts on this post right here. So let me dig that out. So lo and behold, what do we have? We have the other original cast iron bracket and table assembly for this side of the grinder. Now this gentleman had told me that he didn't realize what this was. He didn't even know that was in there. And he had told me that he had advertised this on Craigslist just the way it is, and that he was looking to get like $175, $200 for it, and was unable to get any bites on it. Well, I think that if whomever was considering buying this grinder had known, A, that he had the second table and it was just removed from the machine, that might have helped sell it, and also B, the fact that he was willing to be a little more flexible on price. In reality, he conceded to me that he probably would have taken $150 cash for this, or I think that's where we ended up figuring out when we were going back and forth, and he finally acquiesced to taking, for an even trade, my compressor and my sander. Because the more I thought about it, the more I realized I think I undervalued my compressor, and he was undervaluing my sander. So what ended up happening was, as I was driving out there, I had set in my mind that, if he comes back at me and wants my compressor and my sander at any cash at all, I'm going to walk away. And I didn't have to do that. He went for that deal. So a little intrepidation, but I'm still happy I got the grinder. But there are some questions, because I can't find any original photographs or information on this particular model. This assembly up here, this cast iron box, okay, on other Hammond models, there was a large cast iron box that was embossed with Kalamazoo, because Kalamazoo, Michigan is where the company is from. All right, so let me just give you a look at the other side of this table before I reposition the camera and get back to talking about, so you can see the way this is made. and there's some casting numbers on there. But I'm more than satisfied that that is in fact the original table for this thing, because it's a virtual copy of this table. So getting back to what I was saying about how this is supposed to look and how it looks now. Well, this cast iron box up here, right now, if I open this up, it's just got some tool bits and stuff in it, almost like a little tool storage area. But on other models, I've seen other models that had painted yellow a large cast iron assembly that sits on top here that's actually a water. I believe it's for water. And it's supposed to drip water onto the wheels. So my first question would be, A, is this for water, or is this actually a tool bit storage box, or just a storage box? B, if it is for water, was there originally another one like this on this side that's been removed? And if it's been removed, has it been removed violently? In other words, did somebody bash the thing? Looking at the center line here, it looks like there is enough room for a mirror image one of these to have come up possibly off of here originally and come over and just would have met up with this other one here, but I don't know. This sheet metal cover right here is definitely fabricated aftermarket by somebody. So why'd they have the table off? Well, a quick check showed that if you try and put this table on right now, this wheel's going to interfere with it. So what this gentleman did was he wanted to have the ability for an end, a wheel that you approach from the end on one side, and a more conventional hand type, like freehand type wheel on this side. And in order to accommodate this larger wheel size, okay, he removed this table. Consequently, when I looked at my stand that he had made, that this was bolted down to, there were a couple of bolt holes off to the side here, and the bolt hole distance perfectly lined up with the bolt hole distance on that $5 fence, $5 table assembly that I had bought. So he had found that table assembly from somewhere, or bought it somewhere, and I think he had it bolted onto this stand so that he could actually use it with the side of this stone also. So I just don't know whether or not there was something more to this casting here, and it was broken off and then holes drilled and tapped to put this cover on, or what's going on. So this is kind of a mystery, and I will probably eventually just do a whole little series on this thing and a little investigation. Maybe we'll take this cover off and get a look at what this looks like under here and see if there's any evidence that it's been broken off or what. Because this, on this side, this piece right here is all part of this casting. This is like one big casting right here. So it's kind of interesting to me. I will fire it up real quick just to show you how sweet it runs. So on the few mentions of this grinder that I found in several forums, guys were talking about, one guy was talking about that he found one on Craigslist or bought it cheap or whatever, and he was asking about it, and he was asking about how noisy it should be and everything, and one of the guys wrote back and said his Hammond just is smooth as a whistle and just runs really really nice and quiet without a lot of vibration, and that's how these were supposed to run, that these were really well made grinders. So this is, by the way, this grinder has a forward reverse switch on it, and I assume that has to do with something to do with that wheel, that at some point you may want to grind on one side of the wheel and then change direction. Alright guys, so let me just show you how smooth this grinder runs and how good it sounds. So there might be a little bit of slight bearing noise in there, but it doesn't sound bad at all. So now I'm just going to show how long it takes for this thing to spin down to a stop once you shut the power off. And what I'll do is I'll use my stopwatch on my phone. Getting this stopwatch to start exactly when I want it to has always been a kind of a pain for me. So I think what I'll do is I'll hit the start button and I'll get it to I'll shut the power switch off right when it gets to 10 seconds, and then I'll subtract 10 seconds off at the end. Now let's call it 2 minutes and 14 seconds. So take the 10 seconds off. It's 2 minutes and 4 seconds that thing keeps spinning after you shut the power off. That seems pretty good to me. I would think if there was an issue with the bearings on this thing, it wouldn't run, it wouldn't run like that. Now, that points out another feature. This thing right here is actually a brake. And when you push on this, it actually rubs on this area right here behind the wheel that the wheel mounts to, and slows it down. So when it's, slowed down quite a bit, then if you want to just get it to stop more quickly, you press this down. So I think that's going to be all I'm going to really look at for right now on this thing. Like I said, I'll do a separate video on the grinder down the road. Let's get to the other items. Now, right about now, you guys are probably going, well, wait a minute. Well, what other items? I thought you were just going back there to do that trade to get the grinder for the compressor and the little sander. Yeah, I did, but I also figured, well, I told the guy, I said, while I'm there, I'll bring a little extra cash and see if I can't shop around for some more items. What I found when I got back there was that they had done some more cleaning up, or they were in the process of doing some more cleaning. And his outlook on what he wanted to keep had changed to the point where pretty much anything was up for grabs. And matter of fact, he really wanted just to get a lot of stuff out of there. So I quickly determined that some of the things I had passed on previously because he thought maybe he might keep them or use them, they were now up on the table as available. And not only that, they were going to be available for dirt cheap. So I ended up just putting together a pile of stuff. And when all was said and done, we got down to brass tacks. But before I get to that, let me show you what I got for free, because the agreement was that anything I found that was related to the grinder itself, if I happen to find, like, other parts that clearly belong to the grinder, that those would be included if we found them. Mainly I was hoping to find the other diamond wheel maybe, or maybe some other parts that might have been removed from the grinder. So this pile of wheels was basically everything I found for grinding wheels there I got for free. And a lot of these aren't going to fit this grinder unless I really, make some serious modifications. But the thing is, they were going to go in the trash if I didn't take them. And some of these probably belong in the trash, but some of them I think are going to be usable wheels. Let's start with this one here. This one's old, I think it's old, Norton Company, Worcester, Massachusetts. This company is still in business. This company has been bought out by a French firm called Saint-Gobain. And so they still manufacture in Worcester, but I don't think they make grinding wheels there anymore. I knew somebody years ago who worked there, and he was working on silicon wafer boats, is what he called them. And for those of you who aren't aware, computer chips are made out of primarily silicon. And the way that they make computer chips, the way they're born, so to speak, is they actually grow a long, for lack of a better term, this long thing that looks like a big sausage, and it's silicon wafer. I'm sorry, it's silicone. Silicon, whatever. Not silicone, silicon. Get my terminology straight. Anyway, so it's a big old sausage looking thing. And then out of that, they slice very thin discs out. And those are what are called silicon wafers. On the disc, through various processes, they apply different layers of different metals and materials to create the little tiny circuit pathways and everything that make up those tiny ICs. And then those wafers get cut up into little tiny little chips that are then put inside of packages and have tiny wires attached to them. It's a whole process. There's probably plenty of videos showing how that's done on YouTube. But what he was making over there at Saint-Gobain was they were making these ceramic boats, which were just special trays that the silicon wafers would sit in when they were being put into special ovens. Years ago, I worked for Digital Equipment Corporation. I worked in their wafer fabrication facility, and I think one of the ovens that they used was something called a Branson oven, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, if some engineer stumbles across this, and he'll probably set me straight on my terminology. This is going way back, but the point is that they needed special holders to hold these wafers when they put them in these ovens. The ovens were really high temperature, and they pumped special gases in to do all kinds of stuff, and to treat these things in a certain way, way above my pay grade. So they make ceramics, high-end ceramics, specialty ceramics there and stuff like that. But back in the day, years ago, they made grinding wheels. Matter of fact, my father-in-law actually worked there for quite a few years. He was a quality control inspector, and one of his jobs was to check the wheels as they came off the line for quality before they were shipped out. And then if you go really far back, the Norton Company apparently was started by somebody who was into stoneware. And so if you actually, in the New England area, you can find a lot of old stoneware crocks and jugs for food storage and things like that. And back in the old days, that's what they would store a lot of stuff in. And, well, hold on, let me show you an example. So this is a typical, this would be typical of what a stoneware jug back in the day would be. This one is unique only because of its size. Usually they're 1 gallon or bigger. This is an extra small one, which is why I scoffed it. You can actually see the little ridges on the bottom here, I believe, are actually from the sawing action of the tool that's used to cut this off of the potter's wheel. So that this would actually be, this would be done in clay. This would be spun on a potter's wheel and then cut off at the bottom. And it would leave those marks. And then of course the glaze and everything would be put on. The handle would be applied. All of that. But this one here has no markings on it, unfortunately. So I'll probably never know who made this one. But a lot of these you would find, and they'd be marked Norton, or I forgot the initials. But anyways, my understanding, from what I heard years ago, and I don't know if this is true, was that apparently the gentleman who owned the company, this pottery company, got a hold of a crude grinding wheel that was used for like sharpening axes and things like that. That was basically made out of this similar material, and it was pretty poorly executed. And he brought that to one of his head artisans there, or potters, or whatever you call them, and said, hey, do you think you could make one of these on our equipment? You think you could make a better version of this, or something along those lines? And supposedly that was the birth of the Norton grinding wheels. And then of course, as time went on, and the company evolved, they started getting into all different kinds of materials for different things. But so from the lowly beginnings of old stoneware pottery like this, we now have, oh God, the materials they make those wheels out of now, it boggles the mind.